Hello and welcome to the Crubcast. This week, we want to pose the question, do games need sequels? Or maybe more specifically, do some games need sequels? I'm Chris Meekness Fan. With me today, below me is Sean Wolfchaos Han. Sean, say hi.
Hi.
We have Brody, assuming the role of two Waluigis on the video end here. Hi, Brody.
Wah.
I didn't like that.
And Moriarty is with us today. Hi, Moriarty.
Hello.
This topic came to us by way of you, and I'd like you to set that up for us because I thought it was interesting.
So there was an article in PCGamer where the Rainbow Six Siege presentation director or some sort of director in regard, creative director, he was in an interview and he was talking about making a sequel to Rainbow Six Siege, which is now 9 years old, if you can believe it. We're coming up on a decade of this game being out. And he said, and I'm going to quote him right here, "I'm not going to name names, but you see games that did go through sequels and just completely drop the ball because they have to remake every single thing that they did in the first game." He compared it then to losing your homework and having to redo it, except, quote, "you'll never make it exactly the same way. It can be really frustrating, really costly, and in the end, it doesn't even give you anything that was a benefit." So what I found very interesting about this is that it's very clear to me that he's referring to some of the games as a service, live service games that we've seen recently that have come out with a sequel, namely Destiny 2, Overwatch 2, and Counter-Strike 2, all of which are, or at least two of those, are direct replacements of the original game. You can't play Overwatch anymore. It was replaced with Overwatch 2. You can't play CSGO anymore. It was replaced with CS2. Mm-hmm. And in both of these cases, more with Overwatch 2 than CS2, but both of these cases definitely, the game is considered something of a failure of a launch. It had a very, very rocky launch. There's not, it's not feature complete. And as a player of any of these games, you're coming into it going, well, why did you do this? Did we really need this? And I think that that's something that's sort of interesting to talk about is what point do you really need a sequel to a game? And do all games need one? And we're going to kind of, I think, mostly keep this somewhat relegated to multiplayer games, because obviously a single player game doesn't need a sequel. Is a very different discussion than a multiplayer, especially something that's sort of competitively viable like this. It's a very different discussion than asking if you need another Spyro, Which we do.
The answer is always yes.
Unless it's bad, in which case we don't need it. But yes.
That's true, actually. I would... Most Spyro sequels, actually, when I think about it, the majority of them we didn't need.
Yeah.
At least you're honest. I appreciate that.
But yes,
so I'm curious, have any of you played any of these new ones? Overwatch, CS2, have you played in Destiny 2? Have you played any of these games, or maybe even Siege?
I haven't.
I mean, I'm a seasoned, long-time Siege player, and I'm glad that they're not doing any kind of sequel for that, because, on one hand, it does suffer a bit from, the hero shooter thing where they add, 8 heroes a year, and so, the starter ones are just completely outclassed entirely. There's no point to playing just about any of the original classes in the game besides, Ashe. So, there's pitfalls like that, and I also don't like how they've gone and redesigned and updated some of the maps to be more competitively viable or whatever, because OG House in Rainbow Six Siege is the best multiplayer map ever created, and now it's not that anymore because they wanted to make it more competitively viable. So that's sucky, I guess, but it's still better than this is Rainbow Six Siege 2, and all that time you spent on unlocking these operators doesn't matter anymore.
Now you get to do it all over again. But maybe it's worse this time, right?
Yeah.
How long have you been playing it? When did you jump into it?
The Siege? The Alpha.
The Alpha. Okay, because this is a 2015 game, and we're in 2014. So we're in 2014.
We went
2024.
Yes. So we went all the way around. It's coming out next year.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not know this game was out that long until we started talking about this to prepare for today's topic. And I found it very interesting, because this feels like the game that it's one of the ones that I don't see anyone ever talk about, right? I think, Brody, I know that it existed mostly through you mentioning it now and then, but at least in my bubbles, right? I probably not in the right communities for it, but I just never see anyone talk about this game. So I thought it maybe had died and would have a sequel coming. So I thought this was very interesting to hear about.
As far as I know, it's still fairly active. I think it's probably Ubisoft's most successful multiplayer endeavor. They've tried doing other things that, like, with the Tom Clancy license, or like, what was that one? It was the 3v3 Call of Duty type. Was that?
Yep.
Oh,
yeah,
it was bad.
Good. They've tried other games. It's definitely failed. And I understand.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of X Defiant, actually.
Oh, that's another 3v3 that also failed.
That one sucked. I played the beta for that one. It was bad.
Yeah. So there's definitely been a couple of different attempts at making these games and making other games as a Ubisoft sort of thing. And Siege is by far their most popular. You know, For Honor still has people playing it, but like...
Oh, yeah.
That's actually wild to me, because that game, For Honor, has the bones of a really good game. It just did not have the content at launch. So I'm not surprised to see that, like, if they've supported it, that it actually has a community.
Oh, yeah, it has a really strong community from everything that, like, I've seen. Like,
it's fun.
There's a lot of people that are, like, really invested into that series. It's really interesting to me. But also at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people on here that know the game too well that if I just hopped in, I would just get murdered within 10 seconds and I'd probably never want to play again.
There's a decent chance. I liked that it was like this. If you remember that, like, Deadliest Warrior PS3 game that was, like, terrible, this is kind of like the fruition of what I think people wanted that game to be.
Interesting.
So I'll give you a couple of games that have been out for a while now, right? That we've seen sort of look at this, I don't know, zeitgeist of sequels. What about like a Team Fortress 2, right? Team Fortress 2 has been out for, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. And whenever the Orange Box originally came out. And I don't think we're ever going to see a sequel, you know?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think we'll ever see a sequel, and I don't think that we necessarily need one either. And I look at Destiny 2, and I look at how Destiny was originally supposed to be a 10-year game, if you remember. They're going to be
technically, in a way, it has gotten there.
Yeah, with Destiny 2.
Yeah.
So with Destiny 2, like I played a lot of Destiny and Destiny 2. The only thing that I say was an improvement from one game to the next was they actually, you know, added a base story in Destiny 2, whereas Destiny 1 was very much, it felt lacking in that regard, where like you had to essentially like seek for the story. You had to go online to really get the stuff, whereas Destiny 2 had more of that base story. But because of everything that Destiny 2 has gone forward with, you really don't get that anymore. You miss out on
base story. Sounds so cool. I can't wait to hop in as a first time player and play through it.
It's actually one of the worst experiences I've ever had as a first time player. I jumped in not too long ago, maybe a year ago, and you can't play any of the original story at all. You just kind of get thrust into this random story. It's a really bad experience.
Yeah,
I don't get. What was the thought process behind that? Because I truly don't understand.
That's it. It's just size for console. Because there's so many console players, right? Because Destiny is first and foremost a PlayStation game. The amount of size that these worlds take up is just so much that they figured, well, we'll remove these 5 and put in 5 more. And they just kept doing that over time until now, if you want to play any of the original stuff, you're just kind of out of luck. Now, you can do some of the worlds in their DLC if you pay for it, but you're going to be alone.
Yeah,
and,
like
that's a whole different problem.
Not that this is like a good solution, but is there at least a way from like a story recap in the game to know what you're...
It's terrible. It's really bad. It's like one of the worst experiences you can have.
Yeah, it's a big market for YouTubers, then I guess, to fill that gap. That seems like a pretty clear one, but...
Which I find hilarious because it really felt like the reason they made Destiny 2 was to kind of make a better story, to keep it actually, you know, coherent. Because the first game, there was like very little story when you first started. And then like if you actually dove into it, okay, there was something there. In the second game, they were like, okay, let's actually give you a story on the first and foremost. Let's let you do this campaign, give you these missions, give you these cutscenes, give you these characters to actually care about. And then since then has been very much like, well, remember like this character that you're probably not going to remember unless you played like this season from Destiny 1 10 years ago. Yeah, so they're here now. And also it's your sister that you probably would have known about from like another DLC that we had. But don't worry, that's gone now. But yeah, so they're here now. So have fun, guys. Yeah, story's great.
Yeah, you do have story creep in Destiny 2, but I think more of a question is why did we need a Destiny 2 versus a Destiny 1? And when we look at sort of where the market was at that point, it's very clear that the reason we have a Destiny 2 was so that Activision could sell another unit, right? Like that's why we got Destiny 2.
There is that, but then isn't there also something to do with like Bungie coming out from under Activision and basically releasing to have control over it themselves?
Yes, no, right? So like the original Destiny was the thing that they started working on after they left Microsoft and they no longer had Halo. So they started working on Destiny, and Bungie is like sort of notoriously the worst at money, and this is why they keep being bought by other companies, is because they're just the worst when it comes to money. And so this is why, Microsoft, Activision, and Sony have all paid for all of their games. They were working on Destiny and they sold Destiny and they didn't have enough money to keep everything running. So they agreed to go and do a deal with Activision, and then Activision wants more units, right? They want something that's annualized, because that was Bobby Kotick's grand plan, was we're going to milk everybody for everything and remove all the fun from all of the games. And when they were doing this, they looked at Destiny and said, how do we turn that into COD? And there's only one way to do it. Well, Destiny 1's dead now, right? We're going to put out 1, 2, 3, DLCs. We're going to push out these expansion packs as fast as we can. Doesn't matter what they have in them. Just push them. And then as soon as it doesn't sell as well, we're going to do Destiny 2. And we're going to push out a new SKU, and we're going to get all these different DLCs on that. And then they left Activision because Activision just cared about profits, and Bungie wanted to care about their story. And that's when they left, tried to do it again on their own, and then failed miserably because they're really bad at money, and got bought by Sony, and now are working on who knows what.
Marathon?
Yeah,
which is going to be a tactical...
that is right, yeah.
It's going to be like an Escape from Tarkov type game.
It's an extraction shooter like Tarkov, yeah. So, like the question here really is, did Destiny 2 need another sequel? And I think the argument is probably not, because they've clearly shown that they can run it for 10 years, right, with Destiny. I think it's more interesting with something like an Overwatch, right? Because the original Overwatch was very, very, very successful when they killed it. Right? Like, you look at Destiny and you go, oh, well, it wasn't super successful. And Activision wanted their $300 million investment back out of it. But when we look at Overwatch, it was successful. It was one of the biggest, or if not, maybe in the top 5. I think it was in the top 5 esports at that point with the Overwatch League, which they've also killed. Like, it was incredible. It was such a big thing. And then they released the sequel because, again, Activision owned them and they wanted a new SKU. And with regards to that, how do you make more money off of Overwatch? Well, you start selling microtransactions. And so they decided they were going to put out a free-to-play Overwatch instead of the $19.99 Overwatch. And how can you convince everybody to do that? Well, you can't just suddenly go free to play, right? No game's ever just suddenly gone free to play, Team Fortress 2, and been successful. That's never happened. So what are we going to do? We're going to introduce a new SKU. We're going to call it Overwatch 2. And now all microtransactions, right? And in order to make that argument, I guess, make sense, they did the 5v5 instead of the 6v6 thing, which people who are playing that game are still having troubles with now.
Yep. And they, I don't want to dive too much into this because I have a lot of issues with Overwatch.
Dive like Diva, dive.
This is the place to dive, baby.
So the thing that bothers me about it, not only just existing is, number one, converting all your stuff from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2 was such a hassle for so many people, including myself. Because if you were on, say you just played on PlayStation, you had to make an account and put all your stuff on that account and make sure that you push everything from one account to the next one before a certain date, or else you'll never get that stuff again. Because trust me, it freaking happened to me because it didn't transfer everything that I wanted it to, because I'm still missing skins to this day that I spent a lot of time on. Number one.
Right,
Number
they
two,
got rid of Overwatch 1, so you wouldn't have been able to go back in. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so any progression you have, you didn't get it in at a certain point, it's gone. Number one. Number two, I don't know what they were building with this game, because it is just Overwatch 1 with 5 characters. What did you spend all this time developing? Because it is different, but for the wrong reasons. They did not balance this game correctly coming out, number one. Number two, they are still having trouble balancing it. For example, for people that have played Overwatch, you know Zenyatta. He's a support character. It automatically starts to heal people. You can heal boost and people, damage your characters, whatever. But like the people around you, as you're doing that,
maybe most importantly, has been there since launch. This isn't a new character.
Yeah, no, yes. But as you heal, people around you as they're getting shot, the healing is overriding the damage output. However, now a new update that they have, that ult that has been like that since the dawn of time, no longer works that way. If you have that out, people can still just basically one-shot characters or deplete their energy as you have that ult going on. Overwatch 2 is such a mess from just the outside looking in, as well as the players looking in. Now, there's some things that I like that they've done, especially not the esports, like the outside esports, but like the ranking esports that they've been doing. I like that. That's a good idea. However, 1 out of 37 issues, one good 37 issues, that's not good. I really think that this game was pushed to go out. Not really think. It is almost for certain that it was pushed to go out due to all the controversy that was going on. Like, hey, all this bad stuff's going. Just get the game out there. We'll figure stuff out later. Have fun.
When they were originally announcing the Overwatch 2 stuff, and you had, I can't remember their 3 talking head names, but when you had them sitting there explaining what they were doing for Overwatch 2, it was very clear that they did not know what they were doing, because it was, we're making it 5v5. Everybody, it's going to be 5v5. We're taking it from 6v6. We're going to make it 5v5. Isn't that exciting? Why are we doing this? Because it's a change, and we needed a change, and now we have a change, and that really felt insane.
Hope you didn't have a consistent group of 6 people you liked playing with.
And the thing I think that really sticks with that is they brought up, character progression, where you'd be able to have story missions and build up characters and get all these skill trees. Which I think they really harped on the 5v5 because that was the only thing that they could do that quickly, because everything else is the rest is going to take time. But that 5v5
single player content's going to take a while to come out,
Yeah,
they've released. The funny part is that they released some of their single player content. They charge $20 for it. It is, I think, 4 missions, and I think the grand total amount of time that it takes you to do is about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's insane that they charge for it. That's people bought or went into Overwatch 2, I guess, not bought, whatever it is, but we're gonna do this one for the single player content. That's kind of what the selling point was, at least how I had heard it, where it was
that was the whole
argument. We're not making any changes. All we're doing is adding single player, really. That's basically it. So it's okay, I guess that's a reason to go in, and then it's nothing, and they charge you more for it. So
it is so difficult to get skins and what have you.
It's definitely got that Battlefront 2 kind of monetization unlock system.
Really bad.
Yeah, if you don't pay for things, you might as well sit down. It's going to be 100 hours to unlock the skin.
Yeah, and that's not an exaggeration. That is how it is.
It's insane. Yeah,
the original Overwatch, they kind of were able to balance it out. But anyway, this is going back to why is there an Overwatch 2? Why is there a sequel to this? And sure, you can make some actual valid arguments, not with Overwatch 2 because they haven't done anything, but with certain games.
You can make some valid arguments, not with Overwatch 2, but you could.
Yeah, but other stuff. But
it is a baffling product from the outside looking in, right? I almost got in because of the single player stuff, because, I like Overwatch enough. I like the world of Overwatch enough, right? That would have been enough to get me in personally. just because like I want to. How do I say this like a normal human being? I wanted to engage with that world more and consume the lore of Overwatch, is how a normal person would say that. And yeah, there's just nothing there. I'm amazed those missions were charged for and not given away as a please keep playing our game. We're sorry.
No. Give it 3 more months and maybe. And by 3, I mean like 8.
They may eventually be free. They may already be free. But the fact is that they launched for quite a sizable amount of money. And it amounted to minutes of gameplay, which is shocking to me. Overwatch is maybe the most egregious example of this, right? But I think when we're looking at do you need a sequel, CS2 is a great example of that too. And I know nobody really played it in our group here, but I have, a CS2 game night every night on my Discord, or every Tuesday on my Discord. Every night we play.
Every night, CS2, baby.
And so I have a community of people who want to play this game, and I'm around it and I see what's happening. It doesn't make a lot of sense, because imagine taking a fully fleshed out massive game, one of the largest, most played game. People forget this is the most played game on Steam, right? Millions of people playing every day. The largest esports community in the world with, 11 or 12 majors a year, insane numbers of stuff, each one with millions of dollars in prizes. Huge, massive game. And they overnight turned it off and turned on CS2, which had completely different physics and 1 to maybe 6 of the maps, right? So like, if for every 6 maps, you'd get 1 out of it. It launched with, I think, 4 maps total. And there's normally like 40, right? And there's no really big change. It's just prettier. And that feels really fucking bad, right? Like for me as a player, I can see you making the
silently writing down the swear. Yes, don't worry.
So for me as a player to be sitting here going, oh man, I really enjoy this. I'm having a lot of fun with this game. And then for you to just literally turnkey it off. It's gone. It's not there anymore. I don't get that game anymore. That sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks.
This is the one I was curious about when you mentioned it, because despite how big it is, you are the only person I know who plays this game. I don't know how. I just never see anyone talk about Counter-Strike ever. And for a second, when I first saw all this stuff being announced back then, cynically, I was like, oh, maybe. Well, not cynically. At first, I was like, maybe they're just rebranding it to make people, just give it a shot in the arm, make people pay attention to it again, kind of thing.
Sure.
It sounds like it went the cynical way, where it's like, we're going to roll everything back so then we can redistribute everying and have these like social marketing bursts of like, now there's a new map, go play with all your friends, and go that route, which I don't. If this was like another game, like a For Honor, I'd be like, I guess I get it. Because if you're For Honor, you maybe need this a little more. But if you're the biggest game on Steam, why do you do this?
It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. The only thing that makes sense to me is and this is the argument that we see a lot with all of these games, and I guess it kind of gets to the heart of it, is that from the developer standpoint, we need to introduce a new engine, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a 10 or 15-year-old engine, we need to introduce a new engine. We need to put out a new game because we need to introduce a new engine. And I do understand that argument, and that was the argument for CS2. It was, look, the CSGO engine is very old. It is still on, Source, and we're on Source 2 as of Half-Life 2, like we've been here for a while now. It is time to move on and sort of update. And I understand that thinking. I really do. I get why Destiny 2, well, not Destiny. I get why Overwatch 2, I get why CS2 looks at it and goes, well, we want to be on a new engine. We want to be on something snappier. We want to be on something easier, something more modern that can look prettier and run better and be more optimized, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to give you the one example that puts the lie to all of it, however, and that is Fortnite. Because as a Fortnite chapter or season or whatever 5 is, right? They introduced on the brand new Unreal Engine 5. They just put it out and everything was the same. It's the same game. It runs on everything the same. Nothing changed. You just had a really big upload or update, and blam, you're on the next engine. And they didn't rebrand it. It's not Fortnite 2. I didn't lose anything. You didn't take away all the stuff. I still have everything. I still can do whatever I wanted to do in Fortnite. Nothing has changed for me. All my maps work the same. I have all the stuff. I, as the user, don't feel like I've lost anything, except maybe some frames if I'm on a bad computer, because I'm on Unreal Engine 5 now, you know? Like, I might have to turn it down from medium to low. But, like...
As someone who came in recently, I didn't even know there was an engine update. I just thought, oh, it must be on Fortnite, whatever Fortnite ran. You know, I had no idea. I didn't know.
Yes.
So
I feel that Fortnite provides, you know, the lie to the need to do a CS2, the need to do an Overwatch 2, because if a game that has 100 million monthly active users, you know, had when they put out this new season with the Fortnite festival, the Rock Band thing, and you had Lego in there and all the new rocket racing thing. They had like 6 million people active every day. That's insane. This is truly insane number of people to be playing a game at the single moment. Is 6 million people, and in no way did they have a problem just saying, "Here you go. Here's a new engine," and they didn't have to put out a Fortnite 2. And I don't know. It feels, you know. And again, this isn't talking about just needing a sequel. It's whether or not these games needed a sequel.
I guess to devil's advocate it, I would say that this conversation was so good that I forgot to plug ourselves. Guys, it's us. We're the Crubcast. Hi, thank you for listening. If you are watching the video on YouTube, please give a like if you've enjoyed the conversation so far. Be sure to subscribe. We are on audio platforms. Go to crub.org or just search for us in your podcast app of choice. We do this live every Tuesday around 6:30, 6:45 p.m. Eastern and go for a couple hours. We stream it live. You can join us in chat. We'll chat with you before and after. And episodes go up on Fridays on YouTube and our podcast services. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/crub. It's great. We've just put up our first episode. Well, we have 2 episodes up now, actually, of Podcastamon, a great name, where we are going through and watching every episode of the Pokemon anime and then talking about it. Over 1,000 episodes. We've committed to that. So if you want to give us $10 a month to get access to that, all of our bonus content we've been making for months, like Mario Party, Spoilercast, Watchcast, all kinds of stuff. I will stop the plug and I will go back to say, to be a devil's advocate, I wonder, I guess the counter argument, not knowing anything about it, would be that if you're Epic, you can afford to pay a lot of people to work on the engine upgrade alongside the teams that would still be working on the game, I guess. But I don't know if that holds water when we're talking about stuff like Overwatch and Counter-Strike, which are like the biggest games.
Yeah, we're talking Activision and Valve, right?
Yeah.
These aren't small things. I understand when a small game, right? Like, I get why Lawbreakers needed to be $50. I understand why the Cycle, you know, wanted to have these hefty microtransactions. It doesn't make sense when we're talking about, you know, a company like Valve that's making $6 or $7 billion a year, or when we're talking about Activision, which, you know, was making $6 or $7 billion a year too.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense for us to say that these don't have the resources to put into some of these massive games. And, you know, when we look at Ubisoft managing to do it with Rainbow Six Siege, right? They're not even in the top 5. We're not talking about a massive corporation that's got insane, you know, resources. We're talking about a couple $100 million company. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not on the same scale. And they know that they've got this game with Siege that is a hit, right? Like a crazy hit. It's the biggest thing that maybe they've ever done.
Yeah. It seems like they're comfortable with that. They're not trying to push it to huge new heights every single year, you know?
And I think if you're them, I understand looking out into this world and seeing an Overwatch 2 and going, oh, that's a cynical piece of shit. And then it happens and, you know, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And there's no way that Overwatch 2 has recouped its costs. There's no way. It can't have. Right? CS2, there's no way that it's recouping costs because people just aren't like if we're saying that it could have maintained and then cost money it dropped players from there. There's no way that this was a success in any of these people's minds. There's no way. And I think that if I'm the Rainbow Six Siege guy and I'm looking at that, I'm going, yeah, I don't think we need to do a sequel. Why don't we take the Fortnite path?
Overwatch, especially, I was thinking about during it. I was like, that is a game born from a project that shambled along for years and years and years. Like, it's a miracle that came out and did anything to recoup any money that was ever put into it when it was Project Titan. If it wasn't under Bobby Kotick, I'd probably think, why are you not just happy with that? But it was under Bobby Kotick, so yeah.
Right, which makes sense. He's one of the worst people that's ever existed on the planet. Yeah, you know, just a terrible, terrible human being that we should all celebrate the fact that he's no longer part of the company. But like, I kept looking at Siege and saying Anvil was a piece of crap, and it is. The engine sucks. The engine sucks, right?
I think the guy even mentioned
their engine has been It's old. It's old. It's like, you know, Fallout 76 running on the creative kit, whatever their thing is, right? Like, it needs to be put out to pasture. It's time, you know? But what's the right way to do that, right? Like, I would understand if Fallout 76 put out Fallout 77, right? And, like, it's the sequel, and it's a free-to-play, you know, whatever, and we've been working on a new engine, and here it is, and whatever. I would get why they would do that. I would understand it. I would be able to go, oh, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know. Brody, I think you had some things to talk about there.
I was just going to say this conversation is going to turn around when Redfall 2 comes out.
I mean, right? So Redfall's actually an interesting one because Redfall's getting better. It's playable now because it sure was bad when it launched. I actually had a lot of fun with Redfall. As a tangent here, I had a whole lot of fun with Redfall, playing it co-op and just not caring, going into it and not treating it like a fun game, but treating it like an experience where we could screw around. And, you know, there's something about just jumping bonsai at a vampire and just shooting it in the face with a stake gun that was enjoyable. You know?
This is your Morbius moment.
Yeah, it was really very Morbius. It was good. I'm curious though, right? So obviously I don't know that there's a whole lot more to be said about this particular thing here because, well, right?
These are the biggest examples of games, right? Like, if I think about ones I've put a lot of time into, obviously, like me, Kevin, Justin put a lot of time into Apex Legends, like thousands of hours at this point. And that's a game where we just hit the 5-year mark, and you maybe look at that and be like, oh, I wonder if they're going to push another one out. But they basically just revamped the way the game works. I think they looked at the issues players were having with the game, and, you know, some of the time to get into action in the matches, I think, was increasing over time, especially on the newer maps. And they kind of just came through a few weeks ago, basically, and said, hey, we're just reworking the game. There's like 30 player matches now. You know, we're basically, it finally has the thing, Moriarty, where a match ends and you just queue up to go into the next match. You don't get kicked out to the menu, I think.
That was such a nice feature. The first time I played Fortnite, I immediately sent that to you. I was like, they just let you go straight from one game to the next. What a brilliant idea.
Right. I was just sitting over in my Apex yard, and I was like, that sure sounds nice. It would be nice to not go to the menu every single game and forget to ready up. But yeah,
every time I would play Apex, right, I'd get back. Okay, game's over. I got to click a button to go back to the menu. All right, I click the button, and then I'm sitting here waiting for the next one to load. And I forgot to ready up.
Yeah, right. And
every time,
you know, they didn't have to push out a whole new Apex Legends 2 for that, right? I feel like maybe we still see one. I don't know. EA is a weird company. I never really know what to expect from them. But if that works out, I mean, hey. That's probably an example of a game that maybe like a Rainbow Six Siege will just kind of keep going, probably the way it should be. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to make a new multiplayer experience and slap a new $60 price tag on it, the answer is to make a 5-hour campaign for a new single player concept that doesn't exist. Tack on the multiplayer, and I will pay that because I miss that. I want tacked on multiplayer back. I want a multiplayer game to only have to be good for 2 months, and then I can move on to the next one.
Well, I guess the most recent example of that would have been the Last of Us 2's multiplayer, right?
Not quite. Not quite.
That's a tacked on multiplayer.
Well, the original one was, right? Like, the original multiplayer was tacked onto that, and then they were like, for 2, they were like, okay, we're gonna spin it off and make it its own thing. And then Naughty Dog was like, actually, we don't want to be a live service studio, so we're not putting that out. It's not going to exist.
Ironically, reviewed by Bungie, and who Bungie, I think, came away from and was like, you will never be able to do a live service game with the way you're handling this. And I guess they just went, okay, canceled.
It's like, all right.
I think
you're right, bro.
Great.
This is maybe my hot take of the century, but I think more games should be canceled. Right? And I don't mean that in the way that like, oh, you should. I just think that not enough games or too many games are getting through the gray box, right? Like they're getting through prototyping, and there's not enough people who are looking at it going, no, Skull and Bones is a piece of shit. It needs to not be here anymore.
Skull and Bones feels like a vanity project by like an executive that like had a sunk cost fallacy. Like
it's 100% sunk cost. 100%. They've been doing it for 11 years or whatever. But I think that's one of those things
from countries. I think that probably also maybe has some weird obligation. Yeah, there's
way too much money involved in it. But at some point, somebody should have looked at it and been like, yeah, no, this should be canceled. And I know that like saying, oh, games should be canceled is anathema to gamers, right? But like, it should be, if it's bad, if it's going to be bad, it should be canceled, and they should be taking those efforts and putting them towards something that's better. And so I don't know. I think more things should be canceled.
Skull and Bones was interesting to watch come and go, because it did come and go. I feel like if this was PS3 era, there would have been like a month of people clowning on Skull and Bones, and it would have been a grand old time. But no one even had the energy to make fun of Skull and Bones. It just came and went. People don't even know what day it came out.
Like Helldivers 2.
Helldivers 2
came out. There was just
out.
other stuff to play.
Yeah.
It's true. There's better games out there. And maybe that's a good part of the do we need a sequel is there's better games out there, and you only really get one shot, right? Like if I'm going to put out a game and then I convince 1 million people to play, I can't expect 1 million people to jump over and buy my new game. I don't understand where that thinking comes from. No matter how good it is. Right? Like, I have to work so hard and spend so much time and effort to convince just the people who are already playing to keep playing. Why would I try to convince them also to open their wallets for a whole new game? It just doesn't make sense to me. It feels so very, very alien to the way that I think, which, a lot of these things, we've got this great audience. You can monetize inside of a game if you've got a great game, right? Mm-hmm. You brought up Helldivers. That has one of the friendliest battle passes I've ever seen. It has one of the lowest cost microtransactions I've ever seen. You can buy a whole skin with a brand new armor and a helmet and all that kind of crap, right? All the things that you would normally expect. It's like $1. It's $1. It's so affordable.
I'm used to, Apex prices, which are like $20 for a skin.
Yeah.
And then Fortnite prices, which are like $8.
I feel like
all expensive.
The Overton window on monetization in games has shifted to the point where now we're looking at like any kind of even remotely ethically done monetization, and we're like, oh, thank God, it's only $1. It's only. I remember Uncharted 3 multiplayer came out, and they were nickel and diming you like $1 for different like clothes sets and everything. And it was like, this is the most egregious thing we've ever seen. And now to think about that, it's like, man, I wish. Even with the examples I gave, it's like the counter is they're free to play. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But man, right before this anniversary thing we were talking about with Apex, they had a Final Fantasy VII crossover event where there was a whole bunch of FF7 skins and items and blah, 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 blah. And I think the grand, like, if you get everything in a collection, you get an item reward, right? Like, you complete the set, you get an extra little item. And it was like Cloud's Buster Sword, the big sword from FF7. And we were just playing this and looking at it, and it's like, you would have to spend hundreds of dollars to get like 32 items. Half of those are just like profile banners and stickers for your little like items in the game that you pick up and use, right? Like hundreds of dollars. And I was just looking at it and I was like, I would never spend a cent on this, but if it was all, I don't know, 20 or 30 total, then maybe I'd sit there and think about it just in that way of like, oh, I play this game a lot, I'll throw them some money, right? But $400, for a chance of getting an item, if you're buying like one loot box, for a chance, you don't even really buy what you want, if I remember correctly. It's just, the loot box thing. I don't know.
I get that it's free to play, but at a point, I'm like, you are going too far in the other direction and kind of just making a game for whales at a weird point. Mm-hmm. So hearing that Helldivers, a paid game, only charges $1 for a skin, I'm like, that's still pretty good though.
It feels good, right? and when we're talking about does a game need a sequel, Helldivers sort of proves that like a good game can have a good sequel, and it does very well, right? And I don't think anybody expected for Helldivers to be the most played game on Steam.
Dude, that was a game.
Although it is a very unique case. Helldivers 1 is just it's a different game. Like it's
it's a totally different game.
Yeah. That was a weird thing where like Helldivers 1, I would hear the PlayStation diehards talk about it and I'd be like, oh yeah, good for them. And then this game is coming out and I was just slotting it mentally next to that, right? It's like, yeah, this is for those people, whatever. I will never hear about this game ever again. And then like 3 days later I check and it's like one of the biggest games ever on Steam. And I'm like, what?
Oh, it's so fun.
Happened?
So fun.
It just came out of nowhere. And so that's sort of the thing where... with my philosophy on sequels, because a lot of these games go into it, right? And they do that movie thing where they're like, this is the first in a trilogy. And my guy, get the first film, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't think that games should be setups for sequels. I think that if a sequel makes sense, sure. And I know that this is not particularly friendly to the capitalist ways that they do it, but if you've got a game, it should be good first.
It's a thought.
Like first and foremost, it needs to be a good game.
I have always been of the mind to set up a sequel or trilogy. It should be more about a story than a series, which sounds like super simple when you hear it's like, oh yeah, it should be about the story, but like so often it's now become about the series. Like, what can we spin off of this series? What can we spin off of Spider-Man? Let's put out Madam Web and Morbius. And it's like, the story
Let's put out Madam Web. Boy,
I had to bring that up.
Have to say that at some point.
I had to bring it up at some point. But like that goes for like a lot of games as well. It's like, what really matters is the story. Does the story have to go out throughout those games? A lot of single player stuff, yes, but really what I've seen a lot of companies now do is like, all right, it's no longer about the story, it's about the series. What can we milk off of this? What can we do? What can we push? What can we make the next sequel be about? And it's like, sometimes just let a game end. Let a game's ending be, its final song. Let it be the end of what it should be. Because we've seen like not a lot. I immediately just thought of Halo because, man, that trilogy, good.
I think you've actually got a really great pivot for us here, because I'm not sure that there's a whole lot more that we can talk about with regards to whether or not games deserve sequels, but with what we have talked about. But I think maybe we could talk about a couple of sequels that didn't need to exist. So what you seem to be talking about is whether or not, a game sequel helps. Right? You're thinking franchise over game. And there's been a couple of examples in the past, 10 years or so where a game has come out because, we need to put out a game in that franchise. And it inevitably leads to the franchise kind of dying. And I think one of those examples that's really, really good is Metal Gear Survive.
A game that I always forget exists until someone brings it up and I go, oh yeah, they did put that out and charge $60 for that, didn't they?
I'm a Metal Gear slut. And I throw that out of my mind every chance that I get. I have not thought about that game in a very long time. You brought it up earlier, threw it out of my head. I was like, yep, okay, that exists. Hate that game. Throw it out. Forgot about it completely. And then you just threw it back at me. And again, just a complete whiplash.
It makes sense why
you talk about swan songs. That's the Fox Engine swan song right there.
No, stop. Shut up. Go to sleep.
It is.
Go take a nap.
But the thing is that for Konami, it makes sense, right? Like, it makes sense why they wanted to put out another game on the Fox engine. And it makes total sense why they would look at it and go, we just spent $50 million making an engine. We're not going to put out one game on that engine. And I think Ubisoft is sort of ironically the ones who does this the most and maybe the rightist. They put out a new engine for Far Cry 3. They put out Far Cry Primal. They put out Far Cry 4 or Blood Dragon. They put out Far Cry 4. Yeah. They put out Far Cry Primal. They put out Far Cry 5. They put out whatever the thing that was that nobody played, like these things, they do this and they've kind of got an idea on how to do that. But Metal Gear Survive is maybe the perfect example of a game that didn't need to exist. And that sort of killed off any of the goodwill that we had before that. I brought up earlier before we got onto this Advance Wars Days of Ruin. You have a little bit of a story about that one, Chris.
Do I? I didn't know I had a story about it. It's an interesting game, right? It's the end of a series that always seemed to get the worst luck, right? Like GBA Advanced Wars 1 came out on September 10th, 2001, right? Even the remake of Advanced Wars 1 that came out on Switch recently had to get delayed because of recent ongoing conflicts in the world, right? So it's always gotten a bad rap, but then Days of Ruin is a weird thing where mechanically, it's basically another Advanced Wars game, but it did this weird, drastic art style shift to be very dark and serious. And like the games had kind of been doing that from the GBA up until then, right? From 1 to 2 to Dual Strike, it was already kind of getting a little more serious with each entry. But Days of Ruin is like bleak and it's like war is real, man. And you got these really big, gruff, serious things done by like a Castlevania artist or something. I forget who did the art. And it just felt so weird tonally that, like, as someone who took Advanced Wars 1 with me everywhere as much as I would like a Pokemon game, remember just looking at it. Must have been like 14 at the time, right? That's probably like 2008. And I was just looking at it and I was like, I don't know if this is for me anymore. I liked all the bright colors and the kid asking what airports are halfway into the game. I don't know if I need this. And I just kind of set it down sadly. I was like, maybe the next one will be good. And then there wasn't the next one.
like the equivalent of that one Mega Man game with the really realistic box art?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like that, but then you put the game in and then the whole game is that, like a weird nightmare scenario.
Do you mean the very original Mega Man? Because it had that very strange where Mega Man's holding a gun and everything. I remember the story behind that is that the American executives and the Japanese executives were not communicating well. And so the American executives were like, we need new artwork for this game, right? We need to have artwork that we can put onto the boxes. And the Japanese executives told an artist to just make something, and he'd never heard of Mega Man, seen anything about it. So he just made art and they sent it over, and there was just some miscommunication in there. And, and that's why they got this, and it just got published because nobody was willing to communicate with each other properly.
I hope that artist is doing well. I'm sure.
I hope they're making $5,000 a month on Patreon.
God.
Yeah. Maybe another example is Mass Effect 3, right? That's sort of an example of a sequel that kind of changed the way we perceive the earlier games, right? Like, I loved Mass Effect 2. I think it's beautiful, wonderful game. I think that the experience that you get from Mass Effect 2 is so unique and so cool. And then Mass Effect 3.
Mass Effect 3 gave us the best final boss in video games, though, Marauder Shields.
Is that real? I've never actually played through 3 all the way, just because I couldn't.
The story behind Marauder Shields is that I guess there's like this final chase sequence at the end of Mass Effect 3, right before the ending, and there's this one random, like, low-level enemy that's just a Marauder that has shields, and his name is Marauder Shields, and people love him because they say he tries to save you from the ending.
Oh,
great!
I love that. I haven't played Mass Effect. So I have no say in this. A game that I thought of before we start, we talked about, what we're going to talk about, what sequel. And instead of thinking of any like multiplayer game, my immediate thought went to Fear 2.
Interesting. What's up with Fear 2?
So Fear 1.
I understand Fear 3. Fear 3 feels like one that didn't need to exist, but Fear 2.
There's a Fear 3?
There is a Fear 3. Fear 3 doesn't need to exist.
Oh, okay.
Fear 1 is very good. It's a very interesting
Spooky.
game. It's Fear 2. I felt like I do like the plot line. I do like a lot of the voice acting and some of the implementation that they did, but it didn't feel very groundbreaking. And to me, it felt a lot more about the gunplay rather than the actual horror aspect. It felt very much like it lost a lot of the...
came in at the top level and was like, we have to make this appeal to, gamers now and all the action games, right?
So like a Dead Space 3.
Yeah.
It just felt like, hey, let's make a second game. But also, and the other thing that bothered me is that there were like some expansions for the original Fear. The second game pretty much made those non-canon. They were like, yeah, no, those don't exist. Screw that. Anyway, and now there's like, because I didn't play Fear 3 after that, so I have no idea how bad Fear 3 is. Because I was very upset. But like Fear 2 just felt very much like, hey, is this canon? Is this not canon? Is that stuff canon? I don't know. But anyway, here's some stuff that you should shoot in slow motion. Have fun, guys.
I don't know that I would say the Fear 2 didn't have a plot. It just had a really wonky plot. It had a very weird plot that involves words you can't say on Twitch.
Okay.
Violent sexual crimes are occurring in this to the player character. It's a very strange game.
Maybe this didn't need to exist, actually. Yeah, maybe we're right.
It's a time, to say the least. I love the original Fear.
Fear 2 is definitely a thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't... That's a hard one, because I feel like the plot, it has a reason to exist, right? Like,
but it's not done well.
That's a different story, though, right? Like, it has a reason to exist. It has a reason to exist. It may not be done well, but it's there, and it wasn't a game that I don't know. When we look at Overwatch 2, there's no reason for it to exist. Right? It doesn't need to be there. When you look at CS2, it doesn't need to be there. And again, I point to Fortnite as my reasoning for why. But when you look at like a Fear 2, I don't think it's in the same category. It's not just a one-for-one replacement. It's, it's a game that has some stuff happening. I think it's a very separate experience from the original Fear.
Oh, yeah.
I got one that I have a personal vendetta against.
Oh,
I'm ready.
It's a game that is, at the same time, a sequel to one game while being a spin-off to it as well, and a spin-off to another game by being in a different series. I am, of course, talking about Little Big Planet karting, the worst kart racer I may have ever played in my life.
You've lived a better life than me.
Here's the thing, right? Obviously, we have the Little Big Planet side of it, where it's that they started the whole like play, create, share motto, which then United Front Games took and created Mod Nation Racers, which had the whole race, create, share aspect to it. Mod Nation Racers, the best kart racer of all time, absolutely incredible, infinitely playable and skill based to a point where it doesn't feel like not like Crash is skill based, where you're just not going to win online. More in like there's like a good enough ceiling where it's fair. Anyway, but it felt very tuned, a very tuned game. It was clearly like people wanted to make a good kart racing game. They had ideas to do it. They made Mod Nation Racers. It's fantastic. Then Sony, I guess, looks at that and says, wow, that was successful. We have a franchise that's basically the same motto for this. Can you guys make us a karting game for that, which will kind of be a de facto sequel to Mod Nation Racers in a way? And they did that, and it was so bad. I cannot, like, the driving felt like you would bump into a wall and you would just come to a stop, right? Where Mod Nation Racers or other kart racing games have a kind of like a tuned mechanic where, you bump, but then you bump off the wall, you bump back a bit, so you don't have to like turn and go move backwards and then go forwards and like get your momentum again. You can kind of just turn out from the bump, whatever. Little things like that, just little tiny things that make a kart racer good. It just didn't have. The cool aspect of it was that like it had a fully 3D level creator, and you could kind of like do things with it to make not just like kart racing tracks. Like Mod Nation Racers had a very tuned, like, this is for building racing tracks, whereas Little Big Planets was like, this is 3D creation software that we're going to limit in a few ways to like kind of try to make you do either a racetrack or like a battle arena, but like you could probably break this in the way that you could other things. So there's a lot of cool things there, but not enough to actually save the game from the fact that it's just bad and just feels bad to play. And my vendetta against that game is because it killed Mod Nation Racers. Like that game, like Mod Nation Racers is never getting a sequel unless like God is real and he answers my prayers.
Looking at current PlayStation, yeah, I don't think there's a God willing to hear you out.
PlayStation live service. You want live service games? Give it to me. Mod Nation Live. Yeah. And then Little Big Planet, of course.
Sent all the money.
I wouldn't say that was. I mean, it's not dead now, obviously, because Sackboy exists, but for a very long time, and the whole creation aspect of it, Little Big Planet 3 killed that more than karting did. But I think karting started the sort of like sword to the gut. I will forever be upset with Little Big Planet karting for just being so bad that it kind of killed two of my favorite franchises.
It's maybe the phrasing that led me to wonder this, right? Maybe I was set up to ask this question just from assuming it. Just something as fundamental as hitting a wall and coming to a stop makes me wonder, did they either put so much time into the track creation that everything else just kind of fell out of whack? Or do you think they had a weird, like, we got to intentionally sabotage this some way, somehow, for some unknown reason? Is there a conspiracy here?
I don't think so. I mean, it's hard, right? It's the same sort of like, it's the same question you ask when you look at a game like Sonic 06 and you're like, you already did skateboarding and snowboarding right. How did you screw it up this time? You already have the framework to do this correctly. How did you screw it up so badly?
Yeah. And that's a great example in the sense that it's not called Sonic Adventure 3, but it basically is a Sonic Adventure 3, right? And boy, that game, everything it can be said has been said, so no need. But yeah, that's a great example, actually.
I do think you had a Sonic example, did you not?
I did. It didn't kill the series though, so I was gonna maybe wipe it under the floor. But like Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 is maybe the most cynical thing I've ever like had to engage with on such a personal level, because like it was being made as a phone game, and it was just like, oh, here's Sonic. He's going through really crappy looking recreations of his old levels. Doo-dee-da. And someone at Sega of America was like, well, what if we called it Sonic 4 and put it on consoles, and then didn't adjust it to be a better feeling or better design game or anything. And they just went, yeah, sure, why not? And it's just like an affront to God that there's a weird episodic Sonic the Hedgehog game with like 4 zones with bad music, with mobile exclusive spin the camera as Sonic goes through loops levels. And it's just a weird thing where I don't know how anyone looked at the quality of that game, said we should call this Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1, and then had it leak on the internet 9 months before release because it was on the Xbox PartnerNet servers where anyone with a developer license could go through and download the game and put it on the internet for some reason. So the entire game leaked, and they had to just sit there for 9 months being like, we're going to make it better. It came out exactly the same way as it was, basically. And I'm just like,
I love that.
On every level, I'm just like, this was like a year and a half of my life looking at this terrible 12-stage Sonic game that came and went. It was $15. I don't know who benefited from it. I don't know. It didn't kill Sonic, right? Obviously.
Right.
It's kept going. You know, we've gotten like better classic styled Sonic games since then. I think it's a direct result. It did take a
bit after that, though.
It took a long time. Like, it's just such a weird thing. I don't know.
You know how they say, like, you have to watch a train wreck? It feels like, as you're explaining this, like I'm imagining them building the train in front of you from the ground up. Then you see that, hey, it's right here. And you're watching it, like, not do well on the tracks. And you're like, this is bad. And you just watch it throughout its entirety of being built, seeing it run poorly. Nothing changes, and then watching it explode. Like, you watched it from beginning to end. You watched its inception and its death.
Yeah.
Congrats. You are...
That's basically how it was. Like, I don't want to go too far into, like, how the community was reaching out and how, like, Sega of America was holding, like, in-person feedback sessions to come be like, hey, what was bad about this Sonic 4 game, you know, like we'll adjust for player feedback. Like it was just so strange all the way through. At every moment, someone was like, "You could just stop. You could just call it something else," and they're like, "No,
no, we can't. Too late." But I love that.
The saddest part is like it's just something I think only Sonic fans cared about because it came out and like it was reviewed decently. You know, he didn't turn into a werehog or have a talking sword or get shot in the chest with a flaming arrow and go into Genie Land, right? So the press was just like, yeah, it's Sonic. You know, 8 out of 10. And it's like, what? No, it's not good. It's fine, I guess.
It was. I wouldn't even call it fine. It was slow. It was bad. What a far cry from where we are now, where I'm like, please port the new mobile Sonic game for consoles. I want to play it very badly.
Oh yeah, the Apple one. Yeah.
The Dream Team. I want to play. I look at that game and I'm like, this looks like it is the best Sonic game that's been made in at least 10 years.
It truly does look incredible, and all you need is an Apple TV. So
I will never own anything in the Apple ecosystem. It will not happen. I need to play this game.
You know, maybe my game that I think in the this screwed up franchise type stuff, and Brody will also be familiar with this, is Duke Nukem Forever. That game destroyed Duke Nukem entirely.
Are you familiar with me, Brody? Confirm or deny, you know Dookie.
I'm familiar with M's thoughts on it.
Have you played Duke Nukem when it came out? Duke Nukem Forever should not have existed, although I'm kind of glad that it does. It's one of those...
That's a colossal, like, epic version of what you were describing about Sonic 4, where it's like there were many, many years where someone could have went, you know what? No, we don't need to, and then not did it.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, it would have been really easy to just not have that happen.
But
you know,
could have just made a new Duke game instead. You know,
they could have. They still could, right? God, I look at it and I go, you know, today Embracer owns it, which is sort of unfortunate because they don't seem to make any games at all.
They like to cancel them. But,
they cancel everything, which, you know, again, they need to cancel more games. But I would really enjoy seeing like Machine Games take on a Duke Nukem type of game. Because look what they did with Wolfenstein, right? Imagine somebody who really wanted to make a good Duke Nukem game going at it instead of Randy Pitchford.
Right.
I want to see Randy Pitchford from the ground up. Like, just he gets it. Like, it's not a development hell game that they were just given to finish. I want to see Randy Pitchford's vision for the next Duke Nukem game. I want to see him program it himself.
Actually. Okay, so if you want that, then what you're looking at is the Bulletstorm Duke Nukem DLC.
No, that's that gives it.
He did from the ground up.
That, you know, honestly, that's probably the best thing that Duke Nukem's been involved in a long time.
Actually, true.
I don't like these
sentences. Everybody just knows that it's Duke Nukem.
There's like a...
He's just saying lines and everyone's like, so moving on.
there was a modder out there. I saw this like a while ago. But there was a modder who's like working on one of the early builds for Duke Nukem Forever before it got to, you know, what it is. Or like a Duke Nukem project that recently fell apart. Not recently, but like forever ago fell apart.
Duke
but
Nukem
that's
Forever? Is that what you said?
There's one project that someone's like trying to rebuild from like the files that they found. I'd have to look back into it. Because I watched like a video on it like months ago. I cannot remember, but it's out there somewhere. That's the only positive thing I've seen that had to do with Duke Nukem, and it's not even being created by the people that own him. It's just some modder who's like, "Hey,
build." I know that from one of the E3 launches. There's a build of Duke
that
Nukem
might
Forever.
be it. I'm not sure.
10 Elements in our live chat confirms that it would be the 2001 build. Yeah.
That might be what I'm thinking of then, yeah. Because someone was building it off of that stuff. And apparently
so
it wasn't too bad.
Do all games need a sequel?
Yes. Because it makes me feel better about my life. That, hey,
I look at
yeah. No. Do all games? No. There you go. That's my
brave
sentence.
take. Brave and stoic as usual. What about you, Brody? You got any thoughts?
Do games need sequels? I think the answer is unequivocally maybe.
Oh, now that's a bolder stance.
Yeah, some yes, some no.
The boldest. I think it is. It's a nuanced take, right? Like, this is a discussion where, does this need to happen? Well, it sure does depend on what it's a sequel to. Because I don't think I need a Duke Nukem Forever 2.
I kind of do.
Like, I just swapped up 3 new Yakuza games in the last 365 days, so I guess I, can't really say.
Yeah, the real question, what we should be asking, the real question is, should we get a Bloodborne 2?
No.
No.
Okay.
No. And with that, I think I can bring us to our Patreon question of the week. We have a question here by Chef Kilo.
Chef Kilo.
Ooh, Chef.
What's a game or game franchise? It says franchise.
I like that.
What's a game or game franchise you have gotten into recently out of curiosity?
I've only gotten 5 hours in, but I can take advantage of the silence and fill the dead air by saying I've been playing the original Mother game on NES for the past weekend. So I'm about 6 hours in. I guess for those unfamiliar, this would be the original Earthbound on NES, right? Earthbound Beginnings is what I think they called it.
It would be, yeah.
Yeah,
Earthbound
interesting name. It is very much a JRPG from the 80s on that console. I have had multiple instances of taking a step, getting into a battle with some low-level enemy I can easily deal with, taking another step and getting into another battle, taking another step and getting into another battle, and then taking 3 steps and getting into another battle, all because I'm trying to go back to my house to drop some items off, because my sister has an infinite inventory, but I have 8 items for some reason, so I have to deal with that. That's not been too fun, but I am going with a guide, and I'm just going like, I just want to see it. I don't need to play it for without a guide just to feel good about myself. Like, I just kind of want to see it. I was just curious. I need to use my Switch for something that isn't Pokemon, so that's just what I landed on. And it sure has me excited to play the next one. But
I think Earthbound's a great game.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've sunk 6 hours into this one, so I'm like, I at least want to try to get all the way through it and then appreciate Earthbound more when I get to that one, because I know that handles a lot of the issues I'm having with this one. But it's neat. Growing up playing Smash, it's neat hearing all the music and being like, oh, it's actually from this game and not Earthbound, right? So that's mine. Maybe we'll see if I become one of those weird Mother 3 people after this.
Yeah. Excited to play it when it comes to Nintendo Switch Online?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to learn Japanese and play it on the Japanese NSO.
That's news broke, and one of my buddies was there like, fine, I will play the English modded one. I'm tired of waiting.
I think that's actually what set me down on this path, because I was just thinking about it. It's like, I still think they will someday, but I've kind of just held off in case they would put it out in English all this time. And I was like, at this point, I'm just going to start playing these games. Whatever. I'll play the fan translation.
Right.
I give up. Someone who isn't me.
Sean.
Me. So I was going to go through games that I've been recently playing, but I think one that I recently got into that I'm going to, go through the games, also for content.
Kingdom Hearts.
I'm going to scream.
Sorry.
Just one time. We were so close to not.
I can write that off my list of things to bring up in this episode. That's good. We got it.
But I never played the Sly Cooper games ever in my life. And I wanted to make a video on it because I felt like that'd be really interesting to do. Because I love platformers. I just never experienced that game in any way, shape, or form outside of, Crub quoting Bentley doing terrible things. But so I played the game, played the first game, and my PC crapped the bed, motherboard was dead, had to blah blah blah, lost all the files, so I had to replay Sly 1 again, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to go to the second game after I actually upload a video onto YouTube. But speaking of YouTube, Brody, you'll go on YouTube, right?
I guess
Sly 1 very good. Yes.
Not that much, but
yeah, I love Sly. Sly's a great game.
I'm really enjoying it.
I love all of them.
Yeah, you haven't played Sly. Play Sly. What are you doing? Come on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, well, the game that I've most recently been playing is Penny's Big Breakaway, but I would like to get farther in that before I give any concrete thoughts on it. Chris and I were talking about it last night, and it's just sort of like a game that you probably have to play more than the first bit of to really get it. and getting the vibe of it.
Yeah.
So what I'll say is, I brought this game up briefly last week, but no one that's listening to this will probably have heard that unless they are also subscribed to us on Patreon, because it was not part of an official episode. I talked for 3 hours basically about like random obscure games that I like. And one of those was a game called Shadow Tactics.
Okay.
Yeah, which is it's sort of in a series, but not a series, kind of like how like Bloodborne and Dark Souls are a series, not a series. Because Shadow Tactics, the developer Mimimi also made Desperados 3 and a game called Shadow Gambit, all of which are categorized as stealth tactics games. And the way that I kind of describe them is like it's kind of like Metal Gear, but if you're playing as a whole heist team, and also you can stop time and synchronize moves.
I guess sort of closer to Monaco, really.
I haven't played that, so I couldn't say.
That one sentence pitch there, I'm like, well, hold on. That sounds kind of
Elgato.
cool.
Hello, Elgato.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah. Hey, Elgato.
Sorry, you said that as if something happened on your end, and I was just like, yeah, no, that's my camera. Anyway, can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're good.
Okay, good. Yeah, that game sounds really interesting just from that, Brody. That made me Google it and go, that does sound cool.
I like it because
their other game is also very cool.
Command. Oh yeah, well, yeah. So yeah. So I mean, what's cool is it's almost like it's a very similar situation to Larian, with at least with Desperados 3, where they got to like bring back a series that they were initially inspired by to make like the best one in the series, kind of thing, or whatever. It's a very cool success story in that way, and they're just like, hey, we're done. We're gonna take a hiatus now because we're tired and we want to do other things, but maybe we'll come back to making games. I don't know. So I've been playing. I played Desperados 3 a while ago, but Shadow Tactics has been really fun, and it really feels like you're taking kind of like a Sly 3 situation where there's like a bunch of different characters, all with their specializations in terms of like stealth and ways that they contribute to the heist. But you have to play them all at the same time, and it uses like old school stealth, like the NPCs have like view cones and things like that, and it interacts with the world in different ways. You have to like lure them and kill them and synchronize kill them, all these different things. I talk more about it. If you want to hear more about that, me talking about that, it's up on our Patreon. I think Chris put it up there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like 3 hours of me just talking about games.
One of the closest games to the original Rainbow Six.
Really?
The very original Rainbow Six. Yeah, because you get to, set up Alpha, Bravo, Charlie timers for taking out people and everything. It's a cool game. It's very neat. It's based off of, as far as I remember, a game series called Commandos, which is also very neat as well. Myself, I've been playing just the trendy games. I just finished up Pal World, and now I'm on to Helldivers. And I also I was on a Good Vibes Gaming thing with them, talking about some Nintendo Switch games, and I've been playing a lot of Nonograms thanks to that, because we played some Mario Super Picross.
Oh man, you're getting into Picross. Okay, yes.
Oh boy.
So I've been playing Nonograms now for like 2 months. I think they vibe with me goodly.
They're pretty neat. Of course, I would say this. There's a Sega one on Switch that I really, really like. You're just making a bunch of old Master System and Genesis sprites out of the Picross.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, those are one that I tried over and over time to get into those, and it didn't really click for me until that Sega one actually a couple years ago, and then I got weirdly obsessed with them. So I can understand. Very good. Well,
and do you think Pal World should have a sequel?
Should Pal World have a sequel? I did think that earlier.
Boy,
probably not.
I don't know, right? That's a tough one. Maybe it should get out of its first month.
No, I think they need to,
more time.
No. They need to throw out whatever roadmap they're making. Just put it all into the sequel.
They need to make Pal World Gold and Silver,
Now I can get up to level 70 in Pal World 2.
I like the idea of them releasing 2 different versions of that game at the same time like Pokemon does.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Gosh.
Okay, well, I think we are wrapped up for tonight. boys, unless there are any parting thoughts.
No.
The multiplayer game that most needs a sequel, Rocket Arena. It's shutting down next month. It needs one. I want to play more.
Ooh.
That's my final thoughts.
Rest in peace, Rocket Arena, a game I forgot existed. Shout outs to Rocket Arena. Okay, well, thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Crubcast, of course. I'm Chris Meekness fan. Thank you, Sean, Brody, and Moriarty for joining me tonight. And we will see you in a week.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.